Thank you very much, and welcome to this meeting of Cabinet. My name is Jonathan Lester, Leader of the Council, and I will be chairing this meeting. In addition to those councillors present in the room, we have some councillors joining our meeting remotely, so I will now check that they can see and hear us, and we can hear them. So, Councillor Fagan.
Yes, good afternoon, Councillor Lester. I can see and hear you. Thanks.
Excellent, thank you. Thank you for joining us. Councillor Stark.
Good afternoon, everyone. I can see and hear you.
Excellent. And Councillor Proctor.
Good afternoon. Yes, I can see and hear you.
Excellent. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so I will now formally open the meeting. The agenda papers and other relevant information for this meeting are available for public viewing on Herefordshire Council's website. The Council is streaming this meeting live on Herefordshire Council YouTube channel and making a recording. To ensure that quality is maintained, please speak as clearly as possible and keep background noise to a minimum. Microphones should be muted when you're not speaking. If you have an issue with your microphone, please let the officers know and we can allocate a new microphone. And please make sure that all devices are turned on silent. Thank you. Others are permitted to film and photograph and record our public meetings, provided that it does not disrupt the business of the meeting. If any member of the public attending does not wish to be filmed or photographed, can they please notify a member of staff? As we move through the agenda, in addition to discussion by Cabinet members, I will invite group leaders or their representatives to indicate if they wish to provide views or questions from their group on each item. Where appropriate, I will also call on any scrutiny chairpersons if that is required. Group leaders or their representatives speak only once on each item. Voting is taken by a show of hands in the room only, and only Cabinet members physically present in the room may vote. Okay, so first item on the agenda is, of course, apologies for absence. So we've received apologies from Councillor Simmons and Councillor James. Have we got any other apologies? No, okay. Item 2 is declarations of interests. Are there any Table A or Table B or any other interests for items on the agenda today? No. Okay, thank you. Agenda item 3 is the minutes of the previous meeting, which was held on the 5th of February. No matters of accuracy have been notified to the monitoring officer. Cabinet members, are you content that the minutes are okay? That's all in agreement. Thank you very much. Agenda item 4 is to receive any questions from members of the public. Members of the public have the opportunity to submit questions to Cabinet in writing ahead of the meeting. We have received 6 public questions for this meeting, and the responses have been published as a supplement to the agenda papers. Those who have submitted a question have also the opportunity to submit a written supplementary question or to attend the meeting to ask their questions live. Supplementary questions must be no more than 1 minute in length and must include a question. I may exercise some discretion, but if I ask a questioner to stop speaking, they must comply with my request. I will now ask the officers to confirm if a supplementary question has been received.
We've received 4 supplementary questions from members of the public. I'll deal with the first 3 written questions first. I'll just bring them up on screen. The first supplementary question is from Mr. Morfitt for Councillor Price. The UK road infrastructure budgets now include emissions sources. Major impacts come from embodied carbon in steel, concrete and asphalt, alongside operational emissions from vehicles. The 7th carbon budget 2038 to 2042 necessitates dramatic cuts, with surface transport emissions projected to need an 86% reduction by 2040 from 2023 levels. Despite this increase in national awareness and the declared climate and ecological emergency in 2020, followed by the 2026 National Security Assessment on Global Ecosystems, highlighting the impact of climate change on biodiversity, showing the risk of ecosystem collapse, degradation of our food, water, health and supply chains. Why did this council refuse to publish a full and updated traffic analysis, ecological impact analysis, emissions analysis and lifetime carbon analysis of its Phase 1 and Phase 2 infrastructure plans prior to giving it the green light?
Thank you for that question. Councillor Price.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Morfitt, for your supplementary question. I've asked the officers to take a look at this, and they've come back with a response, which I shall read to you now. In progressing with Phase 1 of the bypass, the Council has met all statutory obligations. The Council will in the coming days publish a scheme information report that will address several matters raised in the question. The full business case, due to be published in July, will include a full carbon management plan. A contractor, Graham's, has been appointed, and they are working on the final stages of design. As an Achilles Carbon Reduce and PAS 2080 certified company, these certifications demonstrate a commitment to measuring, managing and reducing carbon emissions across operations. The final design will include a full environmental assessment, including carbon impact. Phase 2 is yet to be designed to a high level of detail, and therefore it is not possible to start looking at any such detailed analysis on that phase. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And the next question, please.
Second question is from Rhys Griffiths for Councillor Bramer. When the building is repaired, what plan will be put in place to prevent this happening again?
Councillor Bramer.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Griffiths, for your supplementary question. The current issues were as a result of the previous occupier undertaking unlicensed works, which led to structural failure of the building. The council will ensure that repairs are structurally sound, comply with building control requirements, and will continue to monitor the building moving. A future lease will explicitly require the council as landlord for approval of any structural works. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bramer. Next question, please.
Third question is from Mrs. Morieska for Councillor Price. Thank you for recognising the error in the traffic data relating to the Hereford Southern Link Road. The corrected figure of 435 relates only to HGVs between Walnut Tree Avenue and the railway bridge, with just 107 HGVs on the Belmont Road. Location V camera. 18 travelling northeast into Hereford. The HGVs most likely to reroute onto the SLR, and 89 heading southwest out of Hereford. When validating the traffic modelling from September 2025, the Lidl Superstore was under construction. Does this explain the 328 extra HGVs travelled on the Belmont Road between Walnut Tree Avenue and the railway bridge, but not passing the V camera further along the Belmont Road? And does origin and destination data support the assumption that HGVs by Walnut Tree Avenue will reroute onto the SLR outside of Hereford?
Thank you for the question. And Councillor Price again, please.
Yes, thank you, Mrs. Moravieska, for your supplementary question. I've only had sight of this very recently, and we will come back to you in due course with a response to the question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And the next question, is it from Mr. Milne? Mr. Milne, when you're ready.
Historic England's influential urban panel, visiting Hereford in 2007 and 2018, reminded us of the need for an overarching city area master plan to realise Hereford's economic, social and environmental potential through good placemaking. It had been a requirement of the inspectorate examining the local plan. The plan, drafted in early 2023, ready for final consultation, was the result of the input of many hundreds of people with more than 2,000 suggestions. It had a broad democratic basis. Yet your administration, finding it did not like it, scraps it, wasting tens of thousands of pounds. Now we learn you are to draft a new plan based on just 11 online submissions, there being no meaningful consultation. This is in clear breach of the gunning principles built into your code of conduct, which require consultation to be done conscientiously, at a formative stage, and with adequate time. How do you justify breaching these principles and the waste of money in scrapping the previous plan?
Councillor Biggs?
Thank you, Mr. Milne, for your supplementary. Firstly, the previous plan was a draft plan. It was never adopted by this administration. What we are working on is a master plan that's good for everyone. When we talk about consultation, this original question was about consultation, and I'm reminded of Terry Wogan with his breakfast show, bless him, when his the readers' letters or listeners' letters that would come in, and Lord Harbinger of Doom was a regular contributor to those letters. When you're doing consultation of this sort, what you must engage with is everyone. That's not just the naysayers, not just the critics, but those that will enable and be positive around things. We need young people for the future. We need businesses. We need everybody to be involved. So our consultation, we haven't done consultation so far. It's pre-consultation. We now have something to nearly consult on in terms of a draft piece. That, when it's completed, we'll engage with all the stakeholders. We'll engage as wide an audience as possible to ensure we get all the feedback we need through there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's a really helpful answer. Thank you. Right, so that concludes questions from members of the public. We now move on to questions from councillors. And we haven't received any, or we've received one from Councillor Proctor. Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay. Are we going to read out the question or
Sorry,
so Councillor Proctor, apologies for the hiccup with regard to the question, but you did submit a question, and I trust that you've received the answer. Would you like to ask a supplementary?
Thank you. I did receive an answer, and I would like to ask a supplementary. I asked this question to highlight the challenge the council faces if it is serious about using data as part of its transformation. In 2026, data about place should be held in a geographic information system. We should be staggered to find an occasion when it isn't held that way, though I was not in fact staggered to find that we hold geographic information as hand annotations on images. It's a necessary but insufficient step towards being able to ask questions of the data that you hold the data in a structured electronic format. The Council's current DDAT strategy claims our data is a valuable and key organisational asset, but this is not how you treat key assets. Key assets are managed in line with corporate requirements and using shared standards and skills. In the data world, we often refer to this boring but important stuff as fixing the plumbing. How is the Cabinet member going to ensure that sufficient resources invested in fixing our plumbing?
Thank you, Councillor Proctor. I didn't realise you were in the plumbing business, Councillor Stoddart, but if you can answer in a way that's watertight, I would appreciate it.
Thank you, Leader. I won't make any plumbing comments, but what I will say is that to address that very issue that Councillor Proctor has addressed, we've now employed and got in place a Chief Digital Information Officer who is, as we've explained in the answer to Councillor Proctor, we are addressing that as a matter of priority, and the offer that we offered at the bottom to engage and welcome Councillor Proctor's participation in that, it stands out there. So it's very much, if you'd like to assist us, we're more than welcome. You're more than welcome to come in on board and help. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So that concludes questions from members of the public and councillors. So the next item on the agenda is the reports from Scrutiny Committee, and we have had the LC WIP, the Local Cycling, Walking, Wheeling Infrastructure Plan, go to the committee, and the recommendations are found on page 89 of the agenda pack. Councillor Stark, would you like to make a comment on this item?
Well, thanks very much, Councillor Lester. I think the recommendations speak for themselves. We did find the plan a very useful plan, but we felt that there were some deficiencies that I felt needed to be addressed in the plan to make it more structurally consistent and logical and easier to understand. I think one of the key issues, Leader, was to promote the objectives from the local transport plan to the front of the LC whip so that people are well aware why the LC whip is being drafted, because those objectives are the driving force, because the LC whip sits underneath the actual LTP, and that was quite an important point that we made. We were also concerned, and it's not necessarily in the council's gift, Leader, about the fact that the factors around judging the priorities for active travel routes, both for walking and wheeling and for cycling, there was no weighting amongst them, and we felt that safety and cohesion should be given more prominence in terms of when you decide on the priority for the routes that you want to fund. I'm not sure whether the council will be able to take that forward, but you can imagine that if someone doesn't feel safe going on a particular route, or if the route is not accessible completely across its way, then they're not going to use that route at all. And it doesn't matter how much funding you put into the route, it's just not going to be used. But on the whole, the committee did welcome the plan, and I do hope that the recommendations that we made will help to improve the plan going forward. Thank you very much, Leader.
Thank you very much, Councillor Stark, and to the committee for having a deep dive into this plan, this essential plan. And of course, I note from the recommendations that most of them have either been agreed or partly agreed. So I think your strike rate there is really quite good. So well done to the committee, and thank you for that contribution. We will be coming on to this item now in agenda item 7. So if there's no more comments from Councillor Stark, we will move on to agenda item 7. So the local cycling, walking and wheeling infrastructure plan. So this item is to seek cabinet approval for the adoption of the updated plan for Herefordshire following public consultation. The document sets out the strategic approach to improving walking cycling infrastructure across the county, supporting active travel and travel choice. So the item begins on page 11 of the agenda, and I'll ask Councillor Price to introduce the item.
Yes, thank you, Leader. Today we are presenting the local cycling and walking infrastructure plan for formal adoption. This represents the next key step in our wider integrated approach to transport planning for Herefordshire. In December, we adopted our new local transport plan, which set the overall direction for how we want our transport network to evolve. Since then, we have been working to update and align all our transport policies so they reflect that strategy and the priorities our communities have told us matter most. The LC WEP is a crucial piece of that work. It gives us a clear evidence-based plan for improving walking, wheeling and cycling across the county, and it enables us to prioritise and deliver projects in a coordinated, efficient way. Importantly, the LC WIP sits alongside our major infrastructure proposals, including plans for the bypass, the transport hub and other strategic transport schemes, ensuring that all of our investments work together as a part of a single integrated network. This means the improvements we deliver for active travel will connect seamlessly with wider road, public transport and placemaking projects. Most of all, this plan helps us make sure that every mode of transport our residents and visitors rely on is properly considered, whether they choose to walk, wheel, cycle, use public transport, drive or combine different ways of travelling. The LC WIP strengthens our ability to deliver meaningful, joined-up improvements across the whole county, and I'm pleased to bring it to Cabinet today for adoption. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Price. Cabinet members, I know we've been working on this document for some time. Any comments? Councillor Hercombe.
Thank you, Councillor Price, and thank you, Leader. Just a quick question. In the the proposal before us, it includes a list of future projects. Can you just confirm these are ideas that came forward as part of the consultation and part of the plan, but they're not necessarily funded commitments at this stage?
There is a very long list of projects that can be utilised as part of this plan going forward. They're not prioritised in any way. It's having the document and having the strategies in place for all the transport allows us to get funding and grants from various sources, and these will be prioritised as and when we have the funding to support them.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Swinglehurst.
Thank you. So yesterday we launched a campaign to back the bypass, but it's important to set that in a wider context, which is about enabling choice in modes of transport throughout the county to support our economy, environment and well-being. So the LC Whip is an important element of that overall vision. It aligns with Herefordshire Council's environmental priorities and policies. It will support efforts to reduce the county's carbon footprint, improve air quality and encourage active travel choices for short distance journeys. But the LC Whip is not prescriptive. It encourages and enables individual choice that will benefit the local environment as well as promote well-being. Access to green spaces and the integration of green infrastructure into route design will enhance the quality of the environment, benefit biodiversity, but also enhance the user experience. I'm very pleased to note that the plan takes account of waste minimisation and resource efficiency with an emphasis on sustainability as a golden thread throughout delivery. There are commitments to energy efficiency and carbon reduction to align with Herefordshire Council's carbon management plan, the reporting of environmental performance as a standard within contracts. It's part of a wider vision of Herefordshire where people can get where they need to go or simply enjoy a journey. And that, in delivering that aim, we meet the highest standards of sustainability, reducing waste, improving air quality, reducing emissions, enhancing biodiversity, and improving our environment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Swinglehurst. Right, if there are no further comments about this key document, then I will invite group leaders to make their comments in no particular order. Oh, Councillor Harvey is first off.
Thank you, Leader, especially seeing as I'm the only one who's here in the room. Yeah, Independents for Herefordshire welcome the creation of this plan. It's better to have it than to not to. We're pleased that the assurances, with the assurances that have been given that it will be treated as a live document capable of continuous update as needs and opportunities change, and I guess clarity on how that is going to happen and with what frequency and by what process, I think would be helpful. Independents for Herefordshire would like to suggest an apologies if we've missed it in the document, but I think it might have been saved in a PDF format, which makes it difficult to do a text search on it. That the canal route through the county is it in there? We had it included in the the recently updated local transport plan, and clearly that's recognised as a piece of transport infrastructure, you know, possibly just from a watery point of view, but we do really feel quite strongly that the potential for the towpath to provide a walking and cycling link through the county off-road is something that we probably want to recognise. It's not infrastructure that exists at the moment, but it has the potential to be there. And if it's saved in planning terms, it would be great to actually see it recognised as part of the LC Whip.
Thank you for those comments, which are duly noted. Councillor Proctor.
Thank you. Yes, the Liberal Democrats also welcome the plan. We think that is the first step. It is important that continued focus on active travel is prioritised, and it would be very easy to have the plan, sit it on a shelf, maybe do some stuff when active travel money became available. But so we'd like to encourage a commitment to really kind of focus on delivering walking, wheeling, and cycling infrastructure as part of that balanced infrastructure process. Also, I'd like to emphasise it's really important to engage throughout the process. So in identifying schemes, but also in the design of schemes. Herefordshire has some of the weirdest and worst cycle infrastructure that I personally have ever cycled on around the United Kingdom, and a lot of that could have been addressed if there was better engagement in the detailed design of the schemes, and I hope that that will be a practice that we can encourage. But we also need to help to show how this is these investments will be of benefit not just to the walkers, wheelers and cyclists, but to everybody in the county. If you can create an environment where more people in my ward feel safe to walk or cycle into the city, then fewer of you will be sitting on Aylstone Hill because we'll be cycling past you, not sitting in cars. And I think certainly from this administration, I haven't heard that kind of joined up benefit of this investment to everybody being made.
Thank you. And Councillor Fagan, are you representing the Green Group?
I am Councillor Lester. Thank you very much. So the Greens also welcome this plan, and it's great that it's come to the point where it can be adopted, and also appreciate the fact that a lot of work has gone into this, a huge amount of consultation with the public, and also that the scrutiny recommendations have been included. And I think in terms of the response from the public, it shows how important this plan is to the residents of Herefordshire, that they have actually really engaged with it. And it's great that the plan reflects those comments. And let's just make sure that we keep this as a live plan, because there's a lot that can change over a very short time. And we would need to make sure that members have a way of contributing towards the schemes and the priorities. And there was some concern that some of the projects hadn't been necessarily sort of run through members. Some of the projects had actually been potentially completed already. Certainly some of the S106 money for different schemes, so some of those projects have been delayed because of the changes that we have made to the project delivery team for Section 106. And those projects present really important safe routes for residents in areas where they've had an increase in housing. So we also were really pleased to see that the safety was a sort of priority of the plan. And as Councillor Stark mentioned about the kind of perceptions of safety, that was really important, and that we sort of keep that live in the plan as well, because if, as he said, if somebody perceives a route not to be safe, they're not going to use it. Whilst we understand that Hereford is the focus of effort and resources, and kind of given the opportunities and need to encourage modal shift, it feels that the market towns are sort of missing out a bit. They, especially with relation to cycling investment, so Ledbury, Bromyard and Kington in particular, and their kind of peripheral rural areas are almost entirely disconnected and absent from the plan. And those rural areas are really important in not to the economy, not only for the residents that want to use those, but also in terms of tourism. So, and certainly, you know, whilst this is also a great plan to have, we need to remember that in times of fuel stress, as we are sort of going into now, that actually these walking, wheeling and cycling routes are really important, and they will enable people to participate fully in their lives in Herefordshire. So yes, it's a great plan. Let's keep it live. This is really important to the whole county, not just the city. The issues around cohesion, very, very important. We've got some of the best cycling routes in Hereford City, but they are completely disconnected from each other, making that cohesion a real issue. But thanks for the work that's gone into this.
Thank you very much, and thank you for those comments, and thank you to all group leaders for their comments. Councillor Price, did you want to raise any discussion points in cabinet?
No, well, I first of all, I'd like to say thank you to everybody. It has been a long journey, and it's been a lot of consultation and a lot of public involvement. It's one of those things that people love or hate. Cycling is, if you're a motorist, you don't like. If you're a cyclist, you don't like the motorist, mostly because of the infrastructure isn't adequate. Councillor Proctor makes the point about how bad it is in Herefordshire. Why do we always knock Herefordshire? It was brought to my memory last night at the back of the bypass event that somebody was talking about Guildford. I remember as a 14-year-old when I was away at boarding school cycling from Odium to Guildford once only. Jesus, what a time! And that was in the 60s. It was a dire experience, but it was the sort of thing you did. You got on your bike and you travelled the roads. And I happened to go past the corner where Stirling Moss had happened to have had an accident and gone completely off the road and hit the hedge and what have you. And for most of you don't know who Stirling Moss is, I'm sorry, but there we go. But this is really a good news, and we have taken on from the previous administration, and they will be pleased about this, and that I'm mentioning it, that the LUF funding that we got for all of these cycleways and what have you have largely been implemented to deliver for Hereford within what budget we had to do it. And I was just reminded that the Home Lacey Road scheme that is currently on for walking and cycling, it's an expensive project. So about a month ago, it was a horrible frosty morning, and then it turned into slush and ice. I went down to Rotherham just to see what was happening first thing in the morning with people that were getting to work in Rotherham. And it was 5 o'clock in the morning. I got down there at 5:10, and I sat there and watched traffic and counted movements for 2 hours, as if I got nothing better to do. But when I calculated and tabulated what I found, 14% of the people movements on that particular morning, a horrible Monday morning in the middle of February, 14% of the movements were walking and cycling, which I was encouraged by, because, you know, people actually choosing to go to work. When I hear figures saying that, you know, 16,000 people that live in Hereford and work in Hereford drive to work in Hereford, that's an appalling figure. So we've got to encourage more. So this LC whip is actually driving the potential to get alternative modes and modal shift working. So I'm happy with all the responses I've got. The perception of safety is an interesting one, because if you do not feel safe, you don't do it. And I think if we can find ways of making access for walking and cycling to feel safe, we will get a much higher response in that way. And joining up the market towns, well, Herefordshire is rather a large rural area. The market towns themselves, you can move around and get around and be able to invest in it to make that happen. But to join the market towns along our rural highways and byways and the main roads is going to be somewhat of a challenge. The other thing that was mentioned was, I'm not sure whether it was in this, I made a lot of notes, and I think there was something about the canal strategy.
Yes, there was a reference to canals.
Yeah, well, the canal, we do have the idea of a canal strategy, and we are talking with the Canal Trust to enable that to happen. And I do take on board, it probably won't be for a canal, because the canals are probably past repair at present moment, but it will be for the towpaths and using it for active travel. So we've taken on board all of your comments, and thank you for your comments today and the generally positive remarks, and I hope that this goes to adoption. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, if you'd like to propose, I'll second.
Yes,
and,
I will absolutely propose as per the recommendation. Just hold on 1 minute. I will. The recommendations are there on page 12.
Yep.
That the new local cycling walking infrastructure plan, LC-WIP for short, for Herefordshire be adopted. And B, delegated authority be given to the Chief Operating Officer for Economy and Environment in consultation with the Cabinet Member for Transport and Infrastructure to take all operational decisions to deliver the LC whip. Thank you.
Excellent. All in favour? Excellent. Right. Okay. Move swiftly on to the agenda item 8, which is the Q3 performance report. So this is to review the performance for Q3. For the period 25-26, and to report on the performance position across all directorates for that period. The item begins on page 93 of the agenda pack, and I'd like to ask Councillor Stoddard to control the rest of the meeting.
Thank you very much, Leader. Good afternoon, everyone. Today, I'm very pleased to present the third performance report for financial year 25-26 in respect of the Council Plan 24-28 and its associated delivery plan 2025-26. This report supports our vision for Herefordshire and delivering the best for Herefordshire in everything that we do. Please remember that this report covers Q3, which comprises of October, November and December 2025. This report outlines a Q3 progress towards key priorities and performance indicators. Appendix A details the 200 of the 250 milestones, approximately 80%, that are due to be in progress by Q3 and are either completed or on track for delivery by the financial year end. However, the Council has achieved many more successes in Q3 of 25-26 beyond that specified in the delivery plan. We have continued to deliver on our capital investment programme, and the table at paragraph 3 of the report provides some of the highlights from Q3, which includes the Hereford Transport Hub. The main contractor continues on site with only minor delays to the programme currently identified. The Home Lacey Road active travel improvements that my Cabinet colleague just mentioned a few minutes earlier. The main contractor, Cabernis, has commenced on site, and whilst issues have arisen, they are being proactively managed with some delays to the programme. The phosphate mitigation in the integrated wetlands, the second integrated wetland at Tarrington is now completed and working. The Western Bypass, Cabinet approved a process for starting the compulsory purchase orders necessary to secure all the land required for the construction of Phase 1 of the bypass in December. Phase 1 continues to remain on track for delivery, and Phase 2 work continues with traffic modelling work to support the strategic outline business case, which is on track for delivery in 2027, following consultation with the emerging local plan. Employment Land in Herefordshire, a contractor has now been appointed to implement the infrastructure and create the Phase 1 plots at the Ross Enterprise Park, with substantive work expected to begin in mid-February on site. Peterchurch Primary School, new school building. The construction of the new school building is progressing, with new building programme to be completed and occupied by autumn 2026, with demolition and external works completed for the end of December 2026. Aylstone School expansion. Planning approval was granted in November 2026, and it is anticipated that works will commence in March 2026, with the new sports hall and teaching block being completed in spring 2027. The Hampton Dean Primary School extension to LRC. Construction works have commenced on site, with the completion programme for July 2026. The school's capital maintenance programme, works are completed and handed over as part of the Summer 25 programme of work, with further works commencing in spring 2026. The estate's capital programme improvements, we've had 4 projects completed during the reporting period, with a number of tenders issued and evaluated for works which will commence in spring 2026. And finally, at Brookfield School, Hereford extensions and internal alterations, the works have been completed on the new 2 classroom teaching blocks, with works to main secondary school building due for completion in January 26 and the sports hall in March 27. Following all that, I would now like to address the first of the 4 council plan themes, namely that of people. The embedded pie chart in the report shows that of the 87 milestones in the delivery plan, 29 are on track, 35 are completed, 16 are at risk of missing their deadline, 2 have not yet started, 2 are discontinued, and 1 is at significant risk of not being completed by the end of the financial year. Continuing our focus on a child-friendly Herefordshire, partners have continued to strengthen multi-agency information sharing to ensure risks of child sexual exploitation, or CSE, are identified early and responded to effectively. Weekly Get Safe meetings provide a coordinated forum for reviewing emerging concerns and agreeing support for children and young people at risk. Work continues across the Council and partners to strengthen joint funding arrangements through the Joint Commissioning Forum with help partners that support children and young people with complex needs. Turning to our adult services, The Council has continued to work closely with adult social care, public health and partners across the volunteer and community sector to co-design the new Prevention in Adult Social Care strategy, which is now nearing completion. As part of our work to improve services for people with learning and physical disabilities, engagement has taken place with people drawing on care and support and their families to review the range of community activities available to them. The focus was on how these activities could be strengthened to promote independence and skills. I would now like to turn to the second of our themes, that of place, with the pie chart showing of the 89 milestones in the delivery plan. 52 are on target, 12 are at risk of missing a deadline, 19 have been completed, 2 are not yet started, 3 are paused, and 1 is at significant risk of not being completed by the end of the financial year. Cabinet approved a public realm contract in December 2025, supporting the continued delivery of high quality and sustainable local services. Alongside this, the Herefordshire Cultural Partnership is leading the development of the county's new cultural strategy, with the council contributing as an active partner to ensure that the strategy reflects local priorities and delivers positive outcomes for communities. The delivery of the new public electric vehicle charge points has experienced delays, which has resulted in a red RAG rating. 14 additional sockets are scheduled for installation before the end of this financial year, following approval of all proposed sites by the council. However, even with these installations, the year-end target will not be met. As installation is dependent on external providers, the shortfall is outside of the council's direct control. However, work will continue with partners to increase provision and support wider access to sustainable transport across the county. I'd now like to move on to the third of our themes, that of growth, with the embedded pie chart showing that of the 39 milestones in the plan, 18 are on target, 3 are at risk of missing a deadline, 12 being completed, 1's not yet started, and 1 is at significant risk of not being completed in this financial period. Work is progressing to develop the new strategy and delivery plan that will strengthen learning pathways and improve access to employment, further training and skills development. National changes, including the publication of the new Ofsted Further Education and Skills Framework and the Government's Post-16 Education and Skills White Paper, are informing this work by clarifying expectations and future funding priorities for adults most in need of support. The Council's self-assessment report is currently in draft and will guide the next stage of improvement and strategic planning. The Council and NMITE continue to work proactively to identify and develop opportunities that support shared ambitions for skills, education and economic growth. Current joint work is focused on unlocking the potential for growth within the defence and security sector in Herefordshire. Although progress has been slower than planned, this remains a key area of collaboration where further development is expected to strengthen local skill pathways and contribute to future economic opportunities. Turning now to my fourth and final theme, that of transformation, the embedded pie chart shows there are 40 milestones, with 20 on target, 3 at risk of missing a deadline, 15 completed and 2 paused. The Council has successfully piloted a range of AI solutions to identify opportunities that can enhance service quality and efficiency. Following a positive pilot in social care, Magic Notes is now being extended to relevant staff to support improved recording and reduce administrative burden. The pilot of M365 Copilot has also concluded with ongoing work focused on supporting wider adaptation of Copilot chat to enable staff to work more effectively. As this is a rapidly developing area, progress and opportunities will continue to be reviewed as part of business as usual service improvement. The revised contract with Hoople was formally completed in November 2025, providing a strengthened agreement to ensure best value, clearer accountability and improved alignment with the Council's future target operating model. The Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government, or MHCLG, announced in July last year that they are launching a new local government outcomes framework. The outcomes align with the key national priorities ranging from preventing homelessness and rough sleeping to community safety and satisfaction, and the outcomes are underpinned by metrics to measure progress. This approach is designed to support a move away from hundreds of ring-fence grants to instead focus on a small number of tangible improvements for people and communities. Central government will still take a key interest in outcome delivery and intervene where necessary, and MHCLG will work with other government departments to make sure that support and challenge in response to the framework works. Framework data will also feed into the government's assessment of whether the best value duty is being met. A first draft of Herefordshire Council's own outcomes framework has been developed and will soon be shared across directorates for discussion and agreement before being presented to Cabinet. In the meanwhile, we'll continue to report on our top 10 indicators, which are as follows. The percentage of service users aged 65 plus discharged from hospital into Home First who are still at home 91 days after discharge. The Q3 projection was 80%. The Q3 actual year to date was 72.84%. The percentage of children and young people's social work assessments completed within a timescale of 45 days. The Q3 projection was 85%. The Q3 actual was 84.24%. The percentage of children in care who have an up-to-date review. The Q3 projection was 95%. The Q3 actual was 100%. The percentage of major planning applications dealt with in 13 weeks. The Q3 projection 70%. The Q3 actual achieved 88.89%. The percentage of non-major, minor and other planning applications dealt within 8 weeks. The target 80%. The achieved 83.31%. The number of kilograms of waste that's not sent to recycling or composting. The target was 120 kilograms. The target was 120 kilograms. The figure actually achieved was 126.36 kilograms. Number of affordable homes delivered, target 158. Q3 actual target was 193. Number of people rough sleeping, the projection was 5. The actual achieved figure is 12. The value of grants awarded to businesses to support viability through the UK Shared Prosperity Fund. The target was 1.12 million. The achieved was actually 1.135 million. And lastly, the average day's sickness per FTE, the target was 9. The actual figure achieved was 8.53. I would like to draw your attention to Appendix A to the report, which provides the complete updated status of the Q3 Council Plan Delivery Plan across the 4 themes of people, place, growth and transformation. In conclusion, this report continues to highlight the very good work that Herefordshire Council is carrying out in support of all of our residents, and I would now like to invite my Cabinet colleagues to endorse both it and its single recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Stoddart. Cabinet colleagues, any comments, thoughts, observations? Councillor Gandhi.
Thank you, Leader. I'd just like to touch on a couple of items. The number of rough sleepers, as already been reported, we predicted it would be 5 and it is in fact 12. The reason this has come about is a result of the fact that there are 3 groups of rough sleepers in Hereford City who we visit on a daily basis to check that they're okay. Two lots are on private land, and the landowners are quite happy for them to stay there, and the other a group is on public land. We have tried, our outreach officers have tried daily to communicate with these people to try to get some sort of support for them in order to take them out of the encampments and into the night shelter and Lee's Place, etc. But up until now, we have found it impossible to communicate with them. And in a situation like that, when you are trying on a daily basis to try to engage with people who do not want to be engaged with, it's almost impossible to actually do anything about it. A couple of them have used Lee's Place, but again, there wasn't any engagement within there with the volunteers, and a couple of them did use a night shelter, but only for a couple of nights. On a better sort of place within our directorate, we have the number of affordable homes has exceeded its target, and sits at 193, which is a positive step. And since November 2024, we have housed 385 families. I recognise that this is still nowhere near the number that we need to get to, but it is heading in the right direction. And finally, with regards to public health, we have a significant number of homeless people and families in hotel accommodation in a market town. And we have recently done a health check on all of those residents, and that has been a very worthwhile thing to do. And I think it demonstrates to everybody that we really care very much about not just the people who are able to look after themselves, but to actually ensure that those who are less able to, for whatever reason, are looked after from a health point of view, and that we do whatever we can to support them.
Thank you very much, Councillor Gandhi, and some real positive progress there, absolutely, as well as having to deal with challenging circumstances. Councillor Price.
Yes, thank you. Very good picture. I'm sorry that in my portfolio the charging points is showing red. It is a challenging target to meet. There's a lot more to it than just putting up units, of which we are stuck with outside resources to do. We will eventually find that we will have to invest a lot more in it to get on target to be significantly moving to all electric vehicles. But the point I wanted to raise was we've mentioned Peterchurch Primary School a number of times, and I just want to reiterate that part of the delivery of the Peterchurch School was going to be a zebra crossing in Peterchurch on the main road outside of it to coincide with the delivery of the school for September. I just wanted to make sure that whilst I'm asking the questions and I'm not getting the answers, that this is in the project and it will be delivered. It is really significant. We've heard about safety issues already today on other areas, but we do need to make sure that people can cross to the new school safely in Peterchurch in September at the start of the autumn term. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any more comments? Oh, Councillor Powell.
Thank you, Leader. I just want to make a comment about the funding arrangements across health, education and social care. There's an element there. You'll appreciate it's a complicated picture because the Integrated Care Board footprint has extended from Herefordshire and Worcester now to Herefordshire, Worcestershire, Coventry and Warwickshire in what is known as a cluster arrangement. And indeed the capacity of the Integrated Care Board itself will be reduced over time, a matter which will present some challenges for them, but also is presenting challenges across the Children's Safeguarding Partnership. So the current position is that whilst we haven't yet agreed a process that we, the local authority, agree is the most efficient way of making these decisions for continuing healthcare, and importantly their shared costs between the local authority and Integrated Care Board, we are actually resolving these cases through escalation. Now, clearly, that isn't a position that we want to be in, and we continue to raise that concern with the Integrated Care Board. And of course, but we have to acknowledge that their process needs to take account of 4 local authority areas. We're in the process at the moment of completing a case study document to highlight our concerns and to demonstrate how they are playing out in practice. Obviously, we will be sharing this with the Integrated Care Board and our other local authority partners who sit under that footprint. The purpose being simply to work together to both challenge and support the Integrated Care Board to improve that current process for funding decision making.
Thank you very much for that clarification, Councillor Powell. Any other comments? Councillor Biggs?
Yeah, thanks, Leader. I'm just going to mention one that goes under the radar very often on this one, which is the Business Growth Hub. We've got a team there that are engaging with business on a daily basis. And it's always green because we engage, and it's sort of people don't notice the great work they're doing. But when you've got the challenges we have in this county with our productivity, we need all the support we can for our businesses. And I know we're leaning in as administration. It's a priority for us. But I'll give you an example of yesterday. The team put together an event that slips under the radar again. We launched the Ross on Wye Enterprise Park yesterday. So I had a business event there with genuine investors, businesses that are looking to grow their business and relocate onto that park. that are desperate for that land to become available. Councillor Bramer and I have smiled about this a few times of his standing in his coat as a younger man 25 years ago saying coming soon, and finally we've launched it. You know, we've got contractors on site there that are actually clearing land and bringing those first 4 sites available. But that's all very well, but actually bringing those businesses together is a job of that business growth hub. They're an incredibly engaging group of people. They're doing the job every day, and I just want to give them a little bit of praise for keeping that box green.
And Councillor Biggs, am I right in thinking when we report on Q4, it's a bit of a spoiler, but we've already done it. But when we report on Q4, we'll be talking about the opening of the growth hub in Leominster, won't we?
Yeah, we've opened the growth hub, business hub in Leominster, so we're supporting businesses in Leominster there. We're also looking, we're trying to find, I'm working with Councillor Harvey to try and find that location in Ledbury as well. We can do the same. Hopefully we're going to support somebody that's already delivering in Ross-on-Wye to make that a reality. So we've got, and that extending that through, we've got the county bid team, so the tourism team work out of that office as well. So they've got a base that they can bring businesses into and talk to. So yeah, there's a lot going on, and that team are just, for the small resource we have, I think they're really overachieving.
Excellent. Councillor Hurcomb.
Yeah, I just wanted to focus on one of the lines, which is the work with city and town and parish councils on local maintenance. We had the Parish Council Summit recently, and I think from that we got a very good indication that the teams in those areas are doing a fantastic job in engaging with parishes and making sure that those schemes are easy to access and the funding's going in the right place. So I'd just like to publicly take the opportunity to thank them for that work. And obviously we've just launched the new scheme for the year ahead, so I hope parishes engage with that too.
It's excellent. It was very warmly welcomed and praised at the parish summit, and rightly so. Okay, if there are no further questions on discussions at this stage for the performance report, I'll ask group leaders if they want to make a comment. Councillor Harvey, she's in the room, so it's easy to see us hand waving.
Thank you, Leader. Once again, we're presented with a quarterly performance report that feels polished on paper and yet somewhat hollow in substance. At Q2, you told us that delivery was accelerating, that lessons had been learned and that systems were improving. But 3 months on, the Q3 report presents somewhat of a different picture. Many of the same issues remain unresolved, and projects marked amber last quarter are still amber today, and in some cases they've simply been relabelled or pushed away into next year's plan. That might tidy the spreadsheets, but it doesn't tidy our roads, build a single home, or improve a single service. Residents across Herefordshire don't judge us by our reports. They judge us by whether the road outside their home is fixed, whether their planning applications get answered, whether their elderly neighbour can get the care that they need. And in too many cases, the answer right now is not yet. And that's just not good enough. Sharing your top 10 metrics in the covering report doesn't provide assurance or give confidence that all this busyness is translating into genuine, positive, meaningful impact on the ground for our residents. This Q3 report again celebrates prudent financial management, but what we're actually seeing is money unspent because projects aren't ready, or because the system is too slow, or because the system is too overwhelmed to deliver. Carry forwards environments may balance the books, but they don't solve the underlying delays that have become routine in this council. Independents for Herefordshire have consistently said that this council should be judged by outcomes, not by presentations. Yet this report contains plenty of colour coding, but too little clarity. Environmental targets are still deferred, highways remain reactive and not strategic, and communication both with members and with the public continues to blur accountability instead of strengthening it. If something has gone wrong, residents deserve a clear, honest explanation, not a rephased milestone or the promise of better performance next time. We recognise there are committed officers working hard under difficult local and national pressures, But leadership is about facing those realities honestly, not spinning progress where in fact there has been none. Independents for Herefordshire urge this administration to move away from narrative management to focus on genuine delivery, on projects that make a visible difference, on transparent reporting that earns trust, and on engaging ward members early so that we can help and not just comment after the fact. Herefordshire deserves a council that delivers steadily and truthfully, not one that congratulates itself on rearranging the same undelivered commitments.
Okay, next group leaders, well, Councillor Proctor.
Thank you. Yes, I'll just pick up on that impact point because we have also been complaining that the delivery plan does not focus on impact. It was really interesting to hear you go around the room just now and highlight some of the things that you see as successes, because when you do that, you talk about the impact that they have had. But when it's translated into delivery plan, it's a series of actions which may or may not have an impact. And just to kind of give you an example, the transformation area is almost entirely blues or greens. But I think we all accept that transformation has not had a significant impact on the council. And if we can move to focusing on the impact rather than the activity, I think we'll be moving in the right direction. I just want to dive into a couple of specific things. One, and this is, it would be really nice in the future delivery plan if items could be labelled so that I could say I'd like to refer to item 27 or whatever. But I'd like to focus on the deliverable, finalise the long-term strategic model for the delivery of housing across the county. And I'm confused because the note here seems to say we're not going to do that. What I've heard in council and what I understand from the cross-party housing delivery group is that you are going to do that. So what you've done so far is reject a model, but you haven't really established what the model is going to be, and yet it is marked as complete on the delivery plan. And I know the leader doesn't like to talk about a housing crisis, but the numbers in families in temporary accommodation goes up, and we're still not doing enough to deliver more housing. The Hereford Master Plan is touched upon in a public question. Are you pleased with what I now understand was a pre-consultation, and what work will be happening to engage with county councillors who represent city wards, the city council, the BID, city residents? Hereford City is a gap in our planning system. There have been numerous attempts to sort of have different attempts to plug that gap, but the fact that we remain a gap in aspects of the planning system is a real problem for the city, and I would argue for the county. And then finally, on 3 of your indicators, it would be really great if the indicators showed numbers over time so we could see whether things are trending flat, going up or down. But the discharge home, to my memory, has been flat for some years, so it's amber, it's close-ish to the target, but it's not, doesn't seem to be going anywhere, which is very different to the children's social work assessment, which is also amber but is going steadily up, so we can see an improvement. And it would just be very useful to understand a bit about what's happening with that discharge from home indicator, and is it realistic to expect it to go up any further? Thank you.
Thank you for those comments, Councillor Proctor. And finally, Councillor Fagan.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. So the Greens are sort of, again, looking at this, realising that we're nearly at the end of Q4, and we're looking at a Q3 sort of plan and the milestones, and sort of it would be quite good to know where we are closer to Q4, because this will obviously come to scrutiny, but we'll still be looking sort of backwards rather than forwards. However, saying that, thank you for the work that's gone into it. Certainly the work for children and young people, I mean, there are some real bonuses there. the obviously more work to do really in terms of the dealing with the alternative provision, the real need for that in the county, and the fact that the free school has now kind of been is a discontinued project. I realize that's to do with government funding, but this is of absolutely sort of crucial need in the county, as everybody is aware. So also of some concern about the S75 arrangements, the joint funding, what Councillor Powell has raised about the ICB, and the impacts of those on some of the most vulnerable families in the county remain an ongoing concern. I think the other group leaders have raised some really important points, but one of the ones that I wanted to raise was also about the hoople, and the fact that it would be really good if we could now look at this arrangement with hoople and bring this back to scrutiny. It was very disappointing that that was pulled from the scrutiny agenda. So there are. I think what this flags up is that there are areas of sluggishness that we actually really need to get a grasp of, and that would be great to be doing that sort of with councillors as a whole across the council, and not just necessarily sort of through cabinet. But yeah, I think I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. Councillor Stoddard, I mean, just to reflect on all of the performance indicators and all of the milestones that have been achieved. That's a completely different picture, I think, from what was said by Councillor Harvey. I mean, we must be living in different worlds, I think. And I mean, to mention roads, when we've spent record levels on road resurfacing and road maintenance, and to see the positive impact that's having on communities across the county, I think it's clearly a different picture that I can see. And to think about the fact that Children's Services has dramatically improved, and the outstanding management and leadership that Ofsted has graded the council, and to think about the financially robust position that we're in terms of, if you look at other authorities that are having to go for exceptional financial support, and to think that we're launching the Backing the Bypass campaign because we're improving the infrastructure of the county and the transport infrastructure. It seems to me that those are all very positive performance indicators, and to paint a picture that there's this false narrative and that there are negative things not being happening and positive things not happening seems to me to be quite bizarre.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, I have to say that the fact that we're spending £46 million, which is more than double the previous administrations on road repairs, and actually that the state of the part of the state of our roads is down to the disinvestment of the previous administration, who did not spend anywhere near the amount that was necessary to maintain the roads, and we're now struggling with that because this recent very bad weather has damaged that. Certainly I can say that in my ward, in Bromber Bringsty, we've got 4 pieces of roadworks going on. Today you're now going to all find that the ward, all 53 ward members are now being allocated £1,000 each to use to what they see within their wards, so that will hopefully take things forward. It's not perfect. I certainly do not agree that everything is perfect, but what we are doing is we are building and delivering for the people of Herefordshire across a myriad of ways. I refer to, look back again to Children and Young People with the work from Tina and from Councillor Powell, that you'll see in my next report. They're actually not only have achieved good and outstanding management, but they're actually doing it, delivering under budget. So it's not a case of, as the previous administration did, throwing £20 million at children's services, which then under-delivered. What we're doing here is we're targeting things, and it's not just money that make things better. It's about the quality of individuals who will lead from the front, make the hard decisions, sometimes the unpopular decisions, but deliver for the people of Herefordshire. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Right, Councillor Hurcombe.
Yeah, I'm slightly aggrieved to hear roads mentioned, because as Councillor Starts said, our record is pretty impressive in comparison. So the stat that always resonates in my head is in 2022, so the last full year of the last administration, they resurfaced 7 miles of road, and they service dressed 9. In the last year, 2025, we did 64 miles of road resurfaced and 58 miles of service dressing. So if you want to look at the reason the roads are in the state they are, you need to look at the record of the last administration when it comes to highways.
Thank you very much. The facts speak for themselves. Okay, right. If there's no other comments about this item on performance, Councillor Stoddart, you're going to propose, seconded, and all those in favour? Thank you. Right, so whilst we're on the subject of budgets, the agenda item 9 is the Q3 budget report. So the report of the forecast position for 2025-26 at Q3, which is December 2025, including explanation and analysis of the drivers for the material budget variances, and to outline current and planned recovery activity to reduce the forecast overspend. The item begins on page 121 of the agenda pack, and I would like to ask Councillor Stoddart to take us through this item.
Once again, thank you very much, Leader. This report is the third forecast outturn position for financial year 2025-26 and shows that our overall position is £6.3 million overspent, which is expected to reduce to £4.4 million through management action. The Council's approved net revenue budget for 25-26 is £231.5 million, which includes planned savings of £3.9 million. Detailed explanations for variances from budget are set out in the report at Annex A by Directorate and Service Areas. This report presents the forecast outturn position for 25-26 at Q3, that is December 2025, and highlights the continuing in-year cost pressures to support increases in demand across social care budgets, temporary accommodation and special educational needs transport services. The Q3 revenue outturn position for 25-26 shows a forecast variance from budget of £6.3 million, or 2.7% of net budget prior to management action. This variance represents cost pressures of £6.3 million, comprising of £4.7 million of in-year net cost pressures and £1.6 million of brought forward savings targets assessed as at risk at Q3. The 2025-26 approved budget included a contribution from reserves of £1.4 million in 25-26 to the Children and Young People's Directorate budget to bridge the gap of Year 2 savings following the extension of the 3-year financial plan. The contribution was required to be repaid in years 3 and 4, that is 26-27 and 27-28 of the revised plan period. The forecast out position for the Children and Young People's Directorate as at Q3 is an underspend of £2 million, which is a result of robust management of expenditure to deliver services and forecast delivery of savings in full. It is therefore proposed that the contribution from reserves is repaid in the year ending 31 March 2026, a full year earlier than planned. The impact of planned management activity and recovery actions of £3.3 million and the early repayment of reserve funding in the Children and Young People Directorate of £1.4 million will result in a revised forecast overspend of £4.4 million as outlined in Table 2 of the report. Any overspend in 25-26 not mitigated by 31st March 26 must be funded using the Council's available reserves. And the forecast outturn position for 25-26 by Directorate before recovery action is shown in Table 1 of the report. Recovery actions that are expected to reduce this in Q4 include £2.8 million allocation of the Budget Resilience Reserve to mitigate the impact of cost pressures and volatility in demand in directorate budgets, the continued review of the Council's contract arrangements and shareholding in Hoople Limited, and continued challenge of forecast and planned expenditure over the remainder of the financial year through Directorate Expenditure Control Panels. Expenditure controls were first implemented during 23-24 and remain in place to support recovery action and robust control over expenditure in 25-26. Directorate panels will continue to review expenditure on goods and services, as well as changes in staffing arrangements to maintain the increased level of rigour and challenge over expenditure for the remainder of the financial year. The Budget Resilience Reserve was established in 24-25 to manage the impact of the in-year cost pressures and volatility in demand across social care budgets. In the financial year ended 24-25, £4 million of this reserve was applied to cost pressures in the community wellbeing budget, reducing the balance carried forward to the current financial year to £7 million. The proposed £2.8 million use of the Budget Resilience Reserve in 25-26 will further reduce the balance of this reserve to £4.2 million as at 31 March 2026. As detailed in the 26-27 Revenue Budget, Medium-Term Financial Strategy and Treasury Management Strategy report approved by Council on the 13th of February 2026, the £4.2 million balance will then be transferred to the Inflation Fund to manage inflationary increases in directorate contracts. The annual review of earmarked reserves in 25-26 reported by Cabinet on the 5th of February 26 confirmed a forecast balance in the Budget Resilience Reserve of £4.2 million at 31 March 26 and a nil balance at 31 March 27 to reflect the proposed transfer in 26-27. And Table 2 of the report shows the updated forecast revenue positions for financial year 25-26. Turning now to savings. Council approved a total of £3.9 million of savings for 25-26, which comprised of targets in the Children and Young People's Directorate, aligned to the refresh of the 3-year financial plan. A review of the delivery and status of the 25-26 approved savings has now been undertaken, informed by planned and actual activity in the year to date to determine savings targets at risk of in-year delivery. This review confirms that 1.6 million, or 40% of the total approved savings target for this year, has been delivered at Q3, with a further £2.3 million, or 60%, assessed as on target for the year. There are therefore no savings currently assessed as at risk. A breakdown of the 25-26 approved savings is shown in Table 3 to the report, with further details on the status of the individual savings targets set out in Appendix D, Annex 1. Savings not delivered recurrently in previous years have been carried forward into 25-26 for continued monitoring of delivery, and a focused review of the original proposals and planned activity was undertaken during Q1, and revised savings plans have been developed where appropriate to confirm activity to deliver these savings in 25-26. The status of the delivery of the revised savings, which total £11.9 million, is shown in Table 4 of the report, with further detail on the status of individual savings set out in Appendix D, Annex 2. At 31 December 25, £8.6 million, or 72% of the £11.9 million brought forward savings, has been delivered, with a further £1.7 million, 15%, forecast to be delivered in year. 1.6 million, or 13%, remain at risk and with focused activity underway to resolve or mitigate in year. To respond to increasing cost pressures in the provision of mainstream home-to-school transport and SEND transport services, an external review was commissioned by the Chief Executive in 25-26 to identify efficiencies across transport routes, reduce costs, and introduce a new operating model for transport services, with a target to deliver savings of £500,000 in 25-26. This review will deliver savings of £500,000 over the 3 terms of the 25-26 academic year, with £0.3 million recognised in the year ending 31 March 26. That is in respect of the autumn term 25 and spring term 26, with the balance of savings of £0.2 million to be recognised in the first quarter of the 26-27 financial year in respect to summer term 26. I must emphasise that the delivery of savings in full and on time is critical to ensure the 25-26 revenue outturn position is both balanced and to prevent further pressure on future years' budgets. Progress on the delivery of savings and mitigations will continue to be monitored and reporting in the next budget reporting period to Cabinet. I'd now like to turn to address the Dedicated Schools Grant, or DSG. The cumulative DSG deficit is accounted for as an unusable reserve on the Council's balance sheet, as permitted via statutory instrument, which will remain in place until 31 March 28. This enables all local authorities to ring-fence the DSG deficit from the overall financial position in the statutory accounts. Beyond the period of the statutory override, the expectation is that any balance on the DSG unusable reserve will transfer back to the Council's total earmarked reserves. On the 1st of April 2025, the cumulative deficit brought forward was £20 million. The Q3 December 25 forecast reports an overspend of £18.2 million within the high needs block of the DSG, thus increasing the cumulative deficit to £38.2 million by 31 March 2026. Measures to contain the deficit and mitigate future cost and demand pressures continue to be managed by the service through the DSG management plan, and the financial impact of agreed mitigations will be monitored and reported throughout the year as part of the Council's routine budget monitoring process. The final local government settlement, published on the 9th of February 26, confirmed the proposed treatment of DSG deficits as part of wider SEND reform. The first phase of support will be to address historic deficits with a high needs stability grant to cover 90% of high needs related DSG deficit accrued to the end of 31 March 2026. The remaining 10% balance will then be a lot of £155.2 million has been revised down to £115.1 million. The revised capital budget includes £11.7 million of unspent project budgets brought forward from 24-25, removal of a project at £6 million, £14.5 million of additional grants, and a reduction of £60.3 million where budgets have been reprofiled to future years. And a summary breakdown is shown in Table 5 of the report. The forecast spend position at Q3 is 94 million, which represents a variance of 21.1 against the revised capital programme budget of £115.1 million. The in-year forecast variance represents £2.6 million of underspend on project budgets, £18.5 million in respect to project budgets to be rolled forward for delivery in 26-27, and all explanations for variances from budget by individual projects are detailed in Appendix B, Table A. In accordance with best practice, capital budgets were reprofiled at Q2 to reflect the revised expected profile of project delivery. Forecast spend has been monitored by reference to the reprofiled budget from Q2, and the full capital programme, analysed by project for current and future years, can be seen in detail at Appendix B, Table B, with explanations for the reprofile reported at Q2. Forecast delivery of the Council's capital programme for 25-26 assumes a requirement to undertake external borrowing, and provision was made in the approved 25-26 revenue budget to support this borrowing. Cash flow forecasting arrangements have been strengthened in 25-26 to consider the cash flow requirements of the capital programme, managing both the timing and affordability of loan interest payments, minimising cash balances, and utilising internal borrowing where possible in accordance with the Council's Treasury Management Strategy. The capital programme includes a number of projects expected to mitigate key revenue budget pressures, and the delivery of these projects on time and within budget is critical to ensure maximum impact on the 25-26 revenue outturn position and to mitigate pressure in future years. These projects are detailed extensively in Table 6 of the report, and the delivery of capital projects is monitored by individual project boards, Major Projects Forum, and the monthly Directorate Budget Boards. And these projects include Home to School and Send transport pressures, which cover the High Needs grant of £2.1 million, the social care demand and cost pressures, our children's residential homes at £0.4 million, temporary accommodation demand and cost pressures is the acquisition fund for housing, shortage of £5 million suitable, and empty home property investment and cost development £0.6 million per annum. And then finally, the repair and maintenance budgets, the estate's building improvement programme works, and the highways and public realm investment works. Key risks to the capital programme include delays to delivery, limitations in market capacity resulting in a reduced number of bidders, reduced competition and choice, and inflationary increases to costs. Where capital projects are funded by external grants, there is further risk that the delays in delivery mean that grant conditions and time constraints cannot be met, resulting in the loss or clawback of grant funding. All projects are monitored robustly to mitigate the risks to project budgets, delivery of benefits, and potential loss of grant funding. The risks associated with the Council's business are recorded in the relevant Service Risk Register and escalated in accordance with the Council's Performance Management Framework and Risk Management Plan. The highest risks are escalated to the Council's Corporate Risk Register, and the forecast outturn position and management recovery actions recommended in this report will impact and/or mitigate the Council's corporate risks as follows. Corporate Risk 2, demand for client-based services continues to increase, resulting in increased budget pressures and poor outcomes for those people in receipt of our services. Corporate Risk R3, lack of local special educational needs and disabilities, placement, provision to meet current and future levels of demand. Corporate Risk 4, failure to deliver capital and major projects within identified resources and planned timelines, resulting in significant overspend and reduced project outcomes. And then finally, Risk 5, failure to deliver a sustainable financial strategy that supports delivery of the Council Plan priorities. In conclusion, this report, in a transparent and fully open manner, clearly shows the current financial position of Herefordshire Council in respect to both its revenue and capital budgets, and highlights the strong governance in place which will enable us to manage the financial position robustly to deliver the best outturn that we can. I would now like to invite my Cabinet colleagues to endorse this report and its 4 recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Stoddart, for highlighting the budget picture comprehensively. Right, Councillor Hurcombe.
I note in the revenue outturn for economy environment, the residential services, SEN and home to school transport, the overspend or the variance is 2.3 million. I think that would be concerning to all councillors on this council that seems to be growing at a rate that is significantly more than expected. Against the budget of 12.7 million. Can you give us any reassurance that we're taking immediate action to look at that and to manage it appropriately, please?
Let's start out, please.
Thank you. Last Cabinet 2 weeks ago, when we had a brief from Gemma Dando, she gives the latest update on that plan, which I think you may recall me saying that the figures that she was looking at, we're looking for 2 to 3 million, and I'm saying we're actually looking for a lot more than that. But the actions that we are taking, we have to manage sensitively. These are young people and families and individuals, so we have to be there for very cognizant of that. But I think that the plans that Gemma has now put in place, which are now starting to roll out with the use of a council provided service, I think will make a significant impact on it this year, with the potential for next year as well.
Okay, Councillor Powell.
I just wanted to add in and remind Cabinet that Councillor Stoddart's quite rightly identified that this affects individual families and children. That work is being conducted very carefully, in a very considered way, and in full conjunction and co-production with Parent Carer Voice. So it's not a standalone piece of work, it's very much a co-produced piece of work.
I can just also mention that it's sensitivity as well. It's handled in a most sensitive manner.
Excellent. Right. Okay. If there are no further comments, I will invite group leaders to make their comments. Councillor Harvey, please.
Thank you, Leader. Cabinet members, we meet again to discuss yet another quarterly budget report that claims that things are stable and under control. And yet, once again, the evidence in front of us tells a very different story. Overspends are deepening, projects are slipping, the reserves are being quietly drained to keep the books balanced. Stability on paper is not the same as stability in reality. Back in September last year at Q2, we were told that recovery plans were on track. By Q3, those same plans have been delayed, red rated, or simply pushed into next year. Adults and communities continue to overspend, their pressures are significant. School transport, as we've heard, is facing increasing pressures, and you're doing things to try and address that, but we recognise that does take time. The uncomfortable truth is that your administration is limping from quarter to quarter, reacting to problems rather than solving them. Let's look at the capital programme. We were promised delivery on infrastructure, roads, schools, community facilities, and what we're actually getting is another round of reprofiling and deferrals. Those are bureaucratic words for delay. I would remind Councillor Stoddart that at Q2 he doubled the leeway to plus or minus 10% that he was prepared to commit himself to on the final outturn of his revised capital programme. At Q3, that under-delivery is now standing at nearly 60% of this year's original capital budget and more than 18% of the revised capital budget. Perhaps he needs to consider redoubling his wiggle room yet again. Because out there, potholes multiply faster than road repairs can fill them. School works are being postponed and delayed, and local infrastructure stands still or goes backwards, and residents see it clearly. Every missed deadline means our communities pay the price. And then there's the Treasury position. Borrowing costs are climbing, interest rates remain high, and the council's debt burden is growing, yet investment returns are falling. So, for more of every pound raised through council tax is now going to paying interest rather than improving services. And that's not sustainable. And just because our position isn't yet as dire as many other local authorities, it's not honest to present this picture as financial health. And speaking of council tax, residents have seen their bills rise by nearly 5% this year, the highest increase permitted without triggering a referendum. They're paying more and they're getting less. The roads aren't better. Care services are still struggling, and the council's explanation seems to rely on blaming the long-term picture. People are tired of that excuse. They want action, not spin and finger pointing. Independents for Herefordshire are interested in accountability, transparency and delivery. We all represent communities that want to see their council tell the truth about what's going on and what isn't. They want us to make decisions based on evidence, not optimism and personal opinion. We recognise that local councils across the country face financial pressure, but this administration must take responsibility for how it manages those pressures locally, and that means realistic forecast, disciplined delivery, and a willingness for you as a minority administration to challenge your own assumptions. Calling a struggling budget balanced because you've dipped into reserves is not financial prudence, it's financial denial. So our message is clear that time for spin is over, and we are only days away from the end of year pigeons coming home to roost. We need a full and honest review of spending priorities, urgent attention to delivery capacity, and a serious conversation about what this council can realistically afford to do. And, especially after last night's glitz and glamour developer-sponsored CGI extravaganza on the fantastic, i.e. pertaining to a fantasy, road projects, what we cannot realistically afford
Councillor
to
Harvey,
Only
I think Councillor Harvey, it's an opportunity to raise the position of your group, not a party political broadcast. So I accept the challenge. You're just going over old ground. You're repeating the comments and the stance that you had previously, and this is taking up precious time of my meeting. So if you could wind up, please, and we can go to other group leaders, I would appreciate it. you could just make your concluding comments, that would be very helpful.
We also need to consider what we realistically cannot afford to do. Only then can we begin to build trust with the people that we serve.
Okay, thank you for that. Right, group leaders online. Who would like to go first? Councillor Proctor.
Thank you. I'd just like to highlight three things, I guess. So there are significant cost pressures, and those cost pressures are in the areas that we knew that there would be cost pressures. So there does seem to be a problem with how we are forecasting growth in these areas. Should we be being more conservative around how we think about those cost pressures? And also, given that this is the situation at Q3 and the budget was assembled essentially around Q2, should we be revising some of the assumptions in next year's, but as in next week's budget, based on these pressures? And I think one of the risks that we see in this situation, where you're spending a lot of time trying to sort of manage the day-to-day spending, is that we're missing out on opportunities to invest in prevention, which will lead to cost reduction in the future, and also to think more widely about taking a different approach to the delivery of services. And I think home to school transport is an example of where there is some different thinking, but it's also an example of demonstrating that that can take a long time to work through. And so it's one of these situations where it would have been better to start it 3 years ago, but it would be the second best time to start it is now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Proctor. And Councillor Fagan.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, it's such a comprehensive report, and we all know the challenges that are faced, local government is facing. So to sort of meet any savings is an achievement. But again, the pressures in terms of adult social care and the instability that around the NHS and the ICB, we can see that those are actually causing sort of real pressures on our budget. And again, as Councillor Proctor alluded to, have we sort of planned enough for the forthcoming financial year in terms of the challenges that we're facing with adult social care? Really excellent to see the Children and Young People Directorate, the savings that have been made there, and it just shows that sort of what the stability of the service has meant in terms of the sort of financial outturn. So that's really great news, and well done to the Directorate and the work on that. Again, home to school transport that has been mentioned, but I think it's really important to say that the ongoing discussions around that and the inclusion of members in sort of what is happening with that, and looking at alternative ways of providing that home to school transport, that is really refreshing to see. There are some really good initiatives there. I think again, coming back to the kind of geopolitical problems that we're facing, and then the impact of that on travel costs, that I think we're going to see more and more of. That is definitely something to be concerned about. So the council actually taking control of some of those really important journeys that need to be delivered, and doing that sensitively alongside the parent carer voice, that is really welcome. Just a sort of question around corporate services, the overspend there, sort of, it would be good to have more information about this. What are the pressures there, and how can they be mitigated? Real concern about the delivery of capital projects. Do we have the capacity within the council to actually deliver these capital projects? The worry being, obviously, as is in the risk register, a clawback and under delivery, and then also what these capital projects can actually mean for the revenue budget. And then just the last point about the issue of reserves. we're going through our reserves. We're lucky as a council that we still have some reserves. Lots of councils don't have. But what happens when we've spent our reserves? You know, what are we going to do? And that is a sort of, given the reality of the ongoing picture, that is a likely scenario. So it would be interesting to just focus more on sort of what we do to protect our reserves. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for those comments. Councillor Stoddard, I think given the financial pressures that all councils find themselves in, and at Q3, the you know, out of a budget of £231 million to be out of a variance of £4.4 million, I think that really puts it into context about what we're aiming for and trying to achieve. And you know, seen in that context, I think our financial planning and the management of the finances and the way we're controlling the spend throughout the year shows a very tight and disciplined approach to managing the budgets.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, and it's all down to the lady on my left and her exceptionally good team that has put in place the strong governance that is giving us this position. I would like to make you all aware that across the three counties of Shropshire, Herefordshire and Worcestershire, Shropshire has applied for emergency financial support of nearly £200 million. That is actually going to be cost them £12 million a year in interest payments. Worcestershire have applied now for just under approximately £90 million of EFS, which roughly is £6 million of interest payments. We have applied for no EFS. Shropshire have set a council tax increase of 8.99%. Worcestershire set the same at 8.99%. We have set 4.99%, and we only set that because central government have told us through fair funding review and our corresponding power review that we have to have that set at 4.99%. So at all levels, we are operating in a very, very challenging and very difficult area. However, what I would come back to a couple of points on demand. We don't have a crystal ball. However, what we do have is now AI, and we're now using AI extensively to map future demand, not just based, as I used to do, with a straight line exponential use of Excel. This is actually looking into a lot more detail, and our demand planning will get better and better. On the 26-27 budget, I would like to say that when we put that together, which I would remind everyone, we put it through this very full council back in February with one abstention and one against. That budget was informed by all of the relative activity and data and costs that we've got at the minute. And Councillor Powell has referred regularly through this meeting to our data. We are using the bits of data that we do have that are very valuable to use that within the financial plans to give us that information. What we are doing also is very much looking at focused on identifying opportunities in order that we can continue to deliver efficiencies everywhere we go. But we're very much aware that at the end of every one of these efficiencies is a human being. And as I've said a few times here, we have a response to deliver these statutory services, but a lot of them, we also have a moral duty to deliver these. And we have to deliver them in a sensitive and caring manner. And it's human beings at the end of the day that we're dealing with. So we've got to, therefore, do it in a sensitive manner. I'd also like to then address Councillor Harvey's comment about the cynical approach to why are we setting our council tax at 4.99%. Well, I would like to just draw her attention. She may have forgotten about it, but she was part of the council in Ledbury that set 7.6% as their precept. So I think it's a rather cynical that she can come back and lay into us for setting 4.99 when she set 7.6. Yeah,
but that's to take on services you're stepping up.
Okay, all right, okay. All right, let's move on. Councillor Hurcombe.
Yeah, I just want to come back on one of the points that the Independents for Hereford raised about residents wanting to see investment in roads, buildings, infrastructure. in that capital budget we've just reviewed, the outturn, we've got 31.5 million on highways that's spent, 3.263 million on infrastructure improvements and highways that's spent, 3.5 million on estates, which we've spent, 11.186 million on school improvements, which we've spent. I think that speaks for itself.
Absolutely. Again, the facts present the clear picture. Right. Okay. If there's no other comments from Cabinet, yet you'll propose, I'll second. All in favour? Okay. Thank you very much. So we now go on to agenda item 10, which is the risk management update, quarter 3 to 25-26. So this report is to provide an update on the status of the corporate risks at the end of quarter 3 up till December 2025, and provide assurance that the risks are being managed effectively across the council. The item begins on page 157 of the agenda pack, and I'd like to ask Councillor Bramer to introduce the item. No, okay then. Councillor Stoddard.
Thank you again, Leader. The revised risk management strategy for 25-26 and risk appetite statement were approved by Cabinet in June 2025. That strategy sets out the approach and principles of risk management, outlining the Council's risk appetite to inform the management of risk by members and officers across the Council. As part of that strategy, we stated that we review our corporate risks on a quarterly basis. And the report before you today shows that the corporate leadership team have undertaken a review of the corporate risk register, which is included at Appendix A at the 31st of December 25, to update risk scores, consider the adequacy of control measures and mitigating actions, and identify new threats and opportunities to the delivery of the objectives and the priorities of the Council Plan 2024-28. In addition to this quarterly update, CLT and Cabinet continue to monitor risks throughout the year to ensure appropriate and proportionate controls are in place as part of the risk management framework and internal control framework. Updates to the corporate risk register at quarter 2 25-26 were approved by Cabinet in November 25, and at quarter 3 there are no additional risks that have been identified for inclusion in the corporate risk register. However, the scores of each of the 9 corporate risks have been reviewed by the relevant risk owner, supported by discussion and oversight by CLT. And changes to that risk scores for corporate risks are as follows. Risk 3, the lack of special educational needs and disabilities placement provision to meet current and future needs of demand. The score has been updated to 12 at quarter 3. That is the likelihood 3 is possible, the impact 4 major, which is a reduction from our previous score of 16 at quarter 2. The reduction in score reflects changes to control measures and mitigation actions. The additional investment to address demand in the 26-27 capital programme approved by Council in February 26, and also the announcement by Government in respect of funding of the dedicated schools grant deficits and wider planned reforms. In addition to the review of the corporate risk register, CLT members are engaged in activity to review and monitor directorate, service and project level risk registers and embed the revised strategy across the Council. The Council's 25-26 internal audit plan has been reviewed to ensure it is aligned to the refreshed risk strategy and the risks identified in the corporate risk register. And the revised plan was approved by Audit and Governance Committee in September 2025. Further activity planned during 25-26 will include a review of the risk management arrangements as part of the annual review of the effectiveness of the Council's governance arrangements, which will be documented in the annual governance statement. And these will include risk management training, update of the Council's risk management intranet page, and development of risk management dashboard reporting. Appendix A details a corporate risk register and shows the 9 corporate risks with details of the risk owner, the risk appetite, the control measure and mitigating actions, the inherent risk score and residual risk score. In summary, this very clear report is demonstration of the embedded strong governance within Herefordshire Council and fully demonstrates the transparency of the risks that we face by the Council and how they will be addressed. I would now like to invite you all to endorse this report and its 2 recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stoddard. At the risk of cutting anybody off, I don't think, Cabinet, you want to comment on that? Councillor Stoddard has comprehensively addressed the strategy. Group leaders, Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Leader. Independents for Herefordshire welcome the risk register is now coming to Cabinet with at least the same frequency as that of performance and finance reporting, albeit similarly in significant arrears. My group also congratulates officers for the work done to improve and strengthen the process used to assess risk within and across the organisation, and the work of the Audit and Governance Committee in overseeing those improvements. However, as with the pudding, its proof is in the eating, and we've seen only 2 days ago in the most recent Audit and Governance meeting that our internal auditors are flagging failures and inconsistencies in our officers' understanding and use of the risk management process on large capital projects as one example. A place where previous Conservative administrations have shown a dismal record in process and control failures. So, Independents for Herefordshire would like to know what assurance is given that all officers understand the current risk assessment process and understand what actions they need to take to operate within it, and what assurance is provided that this understanding is checked and tested. It does seem something of a nonsense that, since we're here today supposedly considering a risk picture that equates to a view at Christmas, that we have text in the risk register that recognises reduction in corporate risk that we carry concerning the huge dedicated schools grant deficit, which came about as a result of announcements made by government in its budget amendment report in early February. So, which is it? A risk picture at Q3, or Q3 plus or minus whatever you choose to include that happens later than that? You guys write the rules and change them when it suits you, but it would be helpful to know what the answer is on this.
Thank you for those positive comments. And if we can go to the group leaders online. No comment from Councillor Proctor. Councillor Fagan.
It's just good to see that the risk in terms of the send places has been reduced from 16 to 12, and obviously it's really important that we continue to consider the risks that we're facing as we move through these quite challenging times. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. Councillor Stoddart, did you want to finish off your report? No, he didn't want to. He didn't want to comment.
Yes, please, Leader. I would like to say that risk training has been delivered to officers, and the point that Councillor Harvey makes is valid. We make it very clear this is a Q3 report, so it's at December. However, the impact of the DSG in February was so significant that we felt it very appropriate that we include that in this update, because it has such a significant impact. That's why we did it that way.
I'm sure Cabinet will be happy with that. Okay then, so you propose that we accept the updates. All in favour? Yep. Okay, thank you. And then we move on to the final item on the agenda for today, which is the delivery plan, agenda item 11. So this is to approve the Council's delivery plan 26-27. Cabinet is required to produce a delivery plan that sets out how the strategic priorities within Herefordshire Council plan of 24-28 will be delivered and monitored. The item begins on page 171 on the agenda pack. And for the final time this afternoon, I will ask Councillor Stoddard to take us through this report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Leader. The delivery plan 26-27 that is before you today is the third of the 4 delivery plans that are directly linked to the Herefordshire Council Plan 2024-28, which was approved at full council on the 24th of May 2024. The council plan, together with the medium-term financial forecast, or MTFS, are the overarching policy frameworks within which decisions will be taken and resources allocated over the period of this, the 4 years of this period. As part of the preparation for this delivery plan, we have consulted widely, and this has included individual councillors and yesterday a political group consultation, where feedback that has been received at that meeting has now been published as part of the overall document pack. However, I would like to publicly thank Councillor Fagan for her idea yesterday of a young people's version of the delivery plan. And as I said yesterday at the meeting, we will very much look into how that can be delivered or effected as we go forward. Because as we say very much, our young people are vital to the future of this county, and we want to involve them as much as we can. Prior to discussing the details of the Delivery Plan 26-27, I would like to take this opportunity to remind you all of the vision as contained in that council plan, which is delivering the best for Herefordshire in everything that we do. This vision has been at the forefront of our minds as we've worked to detail the elements that make up each of the 4 pillars of people, place, growth and transformation. The Delivery Plan 26-27 outlines how the Council's priorities and objectives will be achieved and specifically what will be delivered in the coming 12 months. It is a constitutional requirement that the Council has a delivery plan that sets out what actions the Council take to achieve the priorities of the Herefordshire Council Plan 24-28. And the delivery plan is agreed each year by Cabinet and progress and monitored and reported through quarterly reporting into Cabinet through the quarterly performance report, routine financial monitoring against the approved revenue budget and capital programme through the quarterly budget report to Cabinet, quarterly progress reporting to the corporate leadership team, monitoring through annual service plans outlining service area priorities and key areas of focus to achieve the objectives, and finally annual individual performance and development plans. The delivery plan for 26-27 at Appendix A includes key deliverables and milestones not completed in 25-26, which will be monitored for delivery in 26-27, alongside new deliverables and milestones to progress the key objectives within the Herefordshire Council Plan set against our 4 priorities of people, place, growth and transformation. Under the people pillar, under which we will enable residents to realise their potential to be healthy and to be part of great communities to support each other, we want all children to have the best start in life, and we support 6 objectives. We have listed 45 key milestones. The place pillar states that we will protect and enhance our environment and ensure that Herefordshire is a great place to live. We will support the right housing in the right place and do everything we can to improve the health of our rivers. And to support the 9 objectives, we have listed 27 key milestones. Under the growth pillar, where we create the conditions to deliver sustainable growth across the county, attracting inward investment, building business confidence, creating jobs, enabling housing development, along with providing the right infrastructure. And we have 5 objectives. We have listed 10 key milestones. And then finally, under the transformation pillar, we will have an efficient council that embraces best practice, delivers innovation through technology, and demonstrates best value for money. We'll support the 5 objectives with 19 key milestones. The monitoring of the delivery plan will be done through our quarterly performance reporting into Cabinet, which will also details of the output related to each item. There will also be routine financial monitoring against the approved revenue and capital programmes, which will be included as part of the regular quarterly budget reporting to Cabinet. And monthly progress reports will continue to be provided to the corporate leadership team. I would also like to take this opportunity to remind you all that the development of any projects within the delivery plan will seek to minimise any adverse environmental impact and will identify opportunities to improve and enhance environmental performance. In conclusion, we have produced a delivery plan that is ambitious and challenging, but one that we believe is clearly deliverable on behalf of the people of Herefordshire. I strongly endorse this report to Cabinet and for its endorsement of the 2 recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Stoddart. Sorry you've had to work so hard today. Councillor Hercombe.
2 comments, if I may, Councillor Stoddart. One, in the comments submitted by the Herefordshire Independents, they suggested that a portfolio lead or a strategic officer was identified as part of the delivery plan. I think that would probably be a sensible approach. It can be quite confusing with the cross-portfolio boundaries with Cabinet to know who's responsible for what. But I think for all councillors, that might help. And the second thing I noticed in the Independents for Herefordshire submission is that they welcome the continuity of our infrastructure plans, which is slightly contradictory to the statement that Councillor Harvey made a few moments ago, suggesting there wasn't enough in infrastructure. So I think it's welcome that you welcome the continuity.
Okay. Any more comments from cabinet members? No. Okay. We're all pleased about the direction of the plan. So I'll go to group leaders if they want to make a comment.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. And I hope I'm not going to be taken to task. I mean, there's a great deal of overlap in the agenda items that we've got in front of us today. So inevitably, there is going to be a degree of repetition of some of the points that I'm making simply because they still apply. So I want to start by saying that all of us, whatever our political persuasion, share the same goal, which is to see Herefordshire thrive. And we believe our duty as in Independence for Herefordshire is to look beyond the headlines and ask, will this plan actually deliver better outcomes for our residents? And we've read the draft delivery plan carefully in the limited time that you made your plan available. And we've not been afforded the courtesy of the proper consultation period that you say you sign up to, but don't seem to be fussed to provide. And what we've seen is a document that is tidy and sensible in its structure. It looks very similar to last year's, but remains unclear in terms of its impact. And as you say, this is year 3 of the delivery for your 4-year council plan, and starting to take a longitudinal view of the overall impact that 3 years of delivery against a 4-year plan is not an unreasonable thing to be expecting to see. It tells us something about what you say you will do, but not what will change for the people of Herefordshire if or when you do it. Residents aren't asking for another strategy. They're interested in much more simple things than that. Will their roads get repaired more quickly? Will their children with special needs get local support? Will the rivers be cleaner and safer? Will someone answer the phone when they call the council? This plan doesn't give them those answers. It's full of process words: develop, review, commence, but also no measurable actions, no timelines, nobody clearly accountable. And thank you for picking up on that, Councillor Hercombe. You say that that's something that you intend to do, and indeed other councils, Wiltshire, Leeds, Cornwall, publish such open dashboards. You say you want to do this, but the measures should already be part of the document that's before you today. The people of Herefordshire expect transparency and not jargon. So, as the Cabinet this afternoon, I say please defer your decision on this document and take the time necessary to plug the evident gaps in the plan, which we've highlighted in the written comment that we've provided on the document. Add clear measurable outcomes and publish your proposed dashboard of measures and targets that you'll then report against in your quarterly reports. Use plain language and explain what your actions in this third delivery plan for your council plan will mean for our communities, and then link those promises to the budget lines that fund them, as you promised to do a year ago. That's just good governance. That's what a competent council should stand for: open, accountable, practical. So Herefordshire needs a living plan so that our farmers and parents and carers and business owners can look at it and say, well, yes, this will make our lives better, and we can see how that's going to happen. So let's move from a plan about plans to a plan about people and performance, because our residents won't measure us by how many documents we've published. They'll measure us by what actually changes for them out there on the ground between now and this time next year.
Thank you for those comments and for the submission that you sent us. Councillor Proctor.
Thank you. It should really, the draft delivery plan should be presented alongside the draft budget. And if it had, so that we can see what the budget is going to intended to buy, and if it had been, that would have given a lot more time for much more meaningful contributions from members across the council and also from external stakeholders, and I think that would have made it a stronger plan. Just some specific questions / comments. Under the objective of work with partners to provide high quality and affordable housing to meet all needs, the only action relates to temporary accommodation. So I remain confused, as I was with the Q3 delivery outturn. What is your plan around the delivery of affordable housing? It's good to see that there is work to develop a youth strategy, though a strategy, just to pick on Councillor Harvard's point, is not actually delivering anything, but it may be a useful way to useful step on the way. It would be great, I made this point at the Parish Summit, but it would be great if town and parish councils were included in that. Town and parish councils increasingly fund youth services, and there are models in other parts of the country where town and parish councils are an integral part of a county-wide youth strategy. And if we're going to do things differently, we need to evolve the relationship that the county has with town and parish councils. And I accept there are a lot of them and they're very different, but where partnership between the county and town and parish councils works really well, it works really well, and we should build on that strength. In the transformation section, there's talk about launching a strategic commissioning and commercial strategy. Is this related to the draft commercial strategy that SMB looked at, or is this a brand new strategy? And what's happened to that draft commercial strategy? And finally, there's talk about strengthening partnerships with communities to enable community action, but that's actually quite limited. And one of the recommendations in the peer challenge was that we should strengthen our relationship with the voluntary sector, and yet we only seem to think about the voluntary sector as something that would need a grant or something that would be commissioned. But actually a healthy partnership with the voluntary sector would be much more complex than that, and would enable us, the people of Herefordshire, probably to deliver much more interesting, flexible services. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Proctor. And finally, Councillor Fagan.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. I think the Greens feel that actually there hasn't been enough time to be able to contribute to this draft delivery plan. And you know, although we support many of the objectives, sort of how they'll be delivered and in what timescale is really sort of not very clear. You know, one of the things, obviously the objectives for young people, but it says here commence construction of the Elston School expansion project, but we know that there may be delays with that because of the judicial review. So you know, sort of where do we kind of identify issues like that within this plan, and the timescales and deliverables? So it would have been great if this could have come to scrutiny and we could have looked at it in more detail then. Just a point about the Shire Hall and the library, that actually you know, if we had actually sort of stuck to the proposals for Maylords, we would actually have a library now, and you know, that would have been great for the residents of Herefordshire who are still waiting for a proper library. And as I said, there's no timescales here, so we can't actually sort of see when that is likely to be deliverable. But of course, the objectives, we support them, and thank you, Councillor Stoddart, for the consideration of a sort of child-friendly version of the delivery plan, and what that means for the young people of Herefordshire. You know, the potential for them to actually sort of fully understand what these projects are and how they can get involved, I think is is great, and to be able to engage them through the participation group that's developing would be really good. So on the whole, we support the objectives. We would like to have more engagement with this, and sort of more idea of timescales, and contribute to it in a greater way.
Thank you very much for those comments, Councillor Fagan. Okay, right. So there's the feedback that we've had from group leaders. I don't know, Councillor Stoddard, if you want to update Cabinet on your thoughts on those responses.
Just one, leader, to go back to Councillor Harvey's comment about linking of funding in there. It wasn't last year. I think it was, what, 2 years or maybe even longer. It might have been the very first delivery plan that we discussed. We then thought about it, and actually we decided that we're already reporting all the financial information in the quarterly budget reports, and therefore, from my position, I don't see any value in bringing that into there.
With regard to the Okay, with regard to the delivery plan as a standalone document, I think the challenge is to have a document that points at what we're doing in this coming year, and the fact that there's a huge amount of work going on that's in granular detail in every department, and it's very difficult to bring forward a document that encapsulates all of the work and all of the rationale behind the work and all of the continuing work that needs to be done. So this is really a snapshot of activity, but it's very difficult to distill the work of a whole department into one snapshot of 1 year's delivery.
Very much so, leader. So, as I say, you've got to view it in the structure in which we have the council plan, with very, very top level strategic objectives, the delivery plan coming down a little bit more tactical, and then our quarterly performance reports, which we've mentioned will be output based. It will have information on there on the outputs, which is what we've been requested to do. We take that on board, and that's the detail in there when we're reporting. The annex to that shows very clearly where all of those individual items, the status of them, what state, what red, amber, green status they are, any main points that we bring to attention on there. We don't want to go back to the previous reporting where it was like a copy of the project manager's log. That's not the aspiration. The aspiration is to give clear, meaningful information to ward members and members of the public if they wish to download and have a read. And as I say, I definitely disagree with Councillor Harvey's comments about the language. I think it's written in a very acceptable and very achievable language. It's written as we aim it at a young adult. That's the target population we're looking for. We don't use jargon. We definitely don't use abbreviations, and we try and explain it all out that way. So I think I believe we're doing a reasonable job, and I would go back to some of the comments I've had from some of the parish councillors that we've sent copies of these to. They've said they're very clear, meaningful, and give them a good understanding of where we got to. Thank you.
Okay. Comments were made about our relationship with the voluntary sector, and I would think, Councillor Gandhi, would you agree that we have a really strong relationship with the voluntary sector, and that relationship continues?
We do have a very strong relationship with the voluntary sector, and I'm bringing to a PGC a framework that we're going to put together that shows exactly what we're going to do going forward, not just with the large voluntary sector organisations, but some of the smaller ones that we don't always go to, but we absolutely do, and they are vital to us to enable us to deliver our services.
Thank you for that. There were comments made about housing delivery. I don't know if any cabinet member wanted to. Councillor Biggs.
Yeah, thanks, Leader. We've got several strands. This is working through the cross-party working groups, having conversations around it. We know that in terms of the capital money we've put in, that's into emergency housing. We look at John Venn and the refurb there and Buttercross, so we're in the right space on those things. But we're using our other assets as tools within that, and that's a developing plan.
Okay, thank you. And we had a very successful meeting with the registered providers with regard to looking at ways that we can help them work in partnership with them to deliver social affordable housing. And that was a really positive meeting. And I understand that we're wanting to have follow-up meetings with them, with several of them, to progress those things. So all really important progress being made on these key issues. So I don't know if you wanted to, if we, oh, sorry, Councillor Powell.
Thanks, Leader. I just wanted to reflect on the comment that you made about the breadth of work that goes on that isn't necessarily represented. So there is reference in this document to delivering the Families First and Family Hub reform. So I just want to take a step back from that for a second. The Children Young People's Partnership Plan for Herefordshire 2019 to 2024 included the requirement to develop a new early help and prevention strategy, and that was published in 2023. So we're still working towards that, but I just want to kind of explain how legislation changes and things develop. The Children Young People's Partnership Board was receiving the progress regard to early help, but with the introduction of the Improvement Board, we stepped that Children Young People's Partnership Board down because of the very detail, the degree of detail in the improvement plan. And of interest, one of the ambitions in the Children Young People's Partnership Plan was for children's services to be rated good by Ofsted, so that was achieved. The Children Young People's Partnership Board is exactly that. It's a partnership board. So we have highlighted some elements in here which we are saying are in the Council's delivery plan, but we are reliant on our partners on working with us, so it isn't straightforward. We've refreshed the membership of that, but it's also important to remind Cabinet that this government has introduced the Families First Partnership Programme, which of course we are implementing locally. This programme requires an absolute transformation of the whole agenda of support and protection for children and families, and has a really strong emphasis on early intervention. Working Together 2026 was published on Friday, 176 pages, so I haven't got through it yet. Chapter 3 also outlines the requirements for family help, included targeted early help and Section 17, so-called child in need. And again, a reminder that Working Together 2026 is a safeguarding partnership focused document, not just the local authority. The Children Young People Scrutiny are currently in the progress of conducting some task and finish work on early help. So I just want to recognise that's really, really valuable, important, and would be really interested to see that. Currently, our Early Help Multi-Agency Operations Group, our Early Years Partnership Board, and our Send and Alternative Provision Strategic Assurance Board all report into the Children and Young People's Partnership. Much work going on, lots of detail behind it. And just to finish, because I've mentioned early help in particular, and the focus on early help in those two strategic government programmes, I just want to conclude with a quote from our most recent Ofsted inspection. In the domain, the experiences and progress of children who need help and protection was graded as good. And the narrative that supports that: children and families benefit from effective early help services. Well-written assessments provide an accurate picture of families' needs, with their views integral and considered well. Workers empower parents to understand their options and to access the services that make a difference. Families benefit from a multi-agency network of professionals with whom they meet regularly to ensure the support continues to be of value. Now, I think that's important because that's the independent inspectorate view of, and I've chosen to focus on early help. And I've chosen that because those two key government strategies, Families First and Working Together 26, including the delivery of family hubs, are reflected in this council delivery plan. But there is a huge amount of work across the partnership that goes on to support those elements. So I don't want people to think these are small things with no detail, no partnership working, and no clear actions that sit beneath it. But in respect of this plan, I don't think it's necessary to go into all of those minute detail in this plan, because that's delivered elsewhere.
Thank you, Councillor Powell, and you really eloquently articulated the point that that this plan has a purpose, but it's part of a much greater whole and much more activity. So that was an excellent example to prove the point. Right, okay, so there are no further comments, so we can go to the vote to accept the proposal of the plan. Yeah, seconded. All in favour? Absolutely. Thank you. Right, so that's approved. So we go to the last item on the agenda, which is to close the meeting. So I would like to thank everyone for their attendance and contributions. That's group leaders and scrutiny chairs. Thank you all for your comments and contributions. And thank you to officers and colleagues. And I just confirmed that the next Cabinet meeting is Thursday, the 23rd of April at 2:30. So it just remains for me to wish everyone a happy Easter, and I will now formally close the meeting. Thank you.